Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special panel discussion, The View from the C-Suite. This is a collaboration actually between IBTV, my colleague here, Georgie Makin, and The Medicine Maker. My name is Rich Whitworth. I'm the content director at The Medicine Maker. We're joined by a fantastic trio who probably need no introduction, but I should give a short one. Miguel Fort, CEO of Kiji Therapeutics, Angela Osborne, CEO of Exmoor Pharma, and Sven Keeley, who's a partner at Saisei Ventures. And I say that with confidence because I lived in Japan for 5 years. Welcome. We're going to shake up the format probably of what you've seen thus far today. But before we get into our discussion here at Advanced Therapies 2025 in London, perhaps we can just get a quick overview of how day one has gone. From your perspective, particularly as chair, has it gone to plan?
It has gone to plan. I think the plan was to get people engaged on the discussions, understanding where we are, which is a challenging environment, but understanding where we can go, which is a bright future, bringing value to patients. People are gathering around discussions, attending. So for me, it went well according to expectations, delivering what I wanted. I hope the others felt the same.
Angela? Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a really good day, actually, much better than I thought it was going to be. I've walked around and met pretty much everybody I know, and that's been lovely. And I've been to some good panel sessions, and they've also been good. So yes, I'm really happy with how it's gone today. Thank you.
And Sven?
Thanks, Rich. First of all, thanks very much for inviting the trio of us up here. You're a very brave man. Um,
We've only got 40 minutes, Sven. I
Yes.
guess. More on you now.
so for me, I think it's been really interesting. Compare and contrast to last year and the year before, where things have been a little more dour, a little more concentrated. I think this time, and thank you, Miguel, for setting the tone. I think the sun definitely came out today. People feel a lot more positive.
Okay.
I chaired a session on investing a little bit earlier today, and one thing that struck me was there was a lot more engagement from the audience, a lot more questions being asked, a lot more specifics being looked for. So I think definitely it's really interesting, a very much more positive environment today, and a lot busier than I remember for the first day last year. So definitely good.
Fantastic. So let's kick the discussion underway. You've framed it very nicely, Miguel, because we're going to start in relatively stormy seas. If we get the next slide, if it works, doesn't really matter. Um, stormy seas. So there are some challenges, I think, this year in particular that have slightly changed the game. There have been elements of news that have crossed my desk. I won't name them right now, but there are shifts in administration in certain parts of the world. There is a sizable shift in the landscape that this field now finds itself operating in. So we wanted to touch upon these stormy seas, and I guess the overall question is: should we be worried? But Georgie is going to dig in with a slightly more specific question to my fluffy intro.
I suppose coming from your different perspectives, what is the impact that you feel some of this, I suppose, tumultuous news has had on the CGT industry? What impact does it continue to have, and what impact may it have, and how are we framing that and looking at that right now?
Miguel?
I'll kick it off. I think we should always understand that biotech, cell and gene therapy, they're not easy endeavors, right? I mean, we need to fight for it. Being resilient, having perseverance, having the passion to believe on what you're doing is important. So I wouldn't say that the adverse winds are not unusual and we should be prepared for them. I actually do agree that the macro environment is bringing us additional things, impacting on uncertainty, leading to risk aversion, which again, it's part of the texture. I think it's particularly important to understand in terms of, I mentioned that before, in terms of funding and investment, be it public or private, I think there's an opportunity for Europe to wake up and actually do more about it, like it's waking up for other things, like defense, so to speak. So it is an opportunity that we need to seize. So I mean, I always like to look at things with a half full glass. And I think the challenges we're having will make us stronger and will leave better value to patients. Um, it is the role of the business that we're in.
Absolutely. Angela, go
I
ahead.
think from my perspective, this has been going on now for 2 years. Yes, we've had a change in administration, which has kind of added to it. But what we can be certain of is that there's a lot of uncertainty. And as one of my investors put it to me was, this is the new normal. Let's just get on with it. And if you think about it like that, you stop whinging. You find solutions, innovative solutions. So for us, collaboration is one of our key cornerstones. We need that more than ever just now, and we need to come up with innovative solutions to work with our clients so that we can help them navigate these difficult times when they can't get funding, and they can help us through these difficult times. And I think we're finding ways to do that. And I think rather than whinge about it, I think we've just got to get used to it and move on.
And that we have, two CEOs here of companies with that theme in mind. That is almost like a mindset, right? To stop whinging and move on. How do you lead your companies through that trouble? You said it, times of uncertainty. It can be difficult, for a CEO for sure, but it's also difficult for the team, working behind that. How do you keep the spirit alive, the passion going? Is it a case of, you know, we know what we're fighting for? Can you just
Well,
comment on that?
I think from our perspective, we've got to show results to our teams that we have work coming in, that we have happy clients, that that we're succeeding. And what one of the things we've done is to recognise that where there's a shortage of funding, particularly for early phase therapies, which is where most of our clients are sitting, we have to cover more ground. That means we need a bigger BD team. That means, we have to be able to demonstrate that we're seeing more people, we're having more conversations, and that encourages the rest of the team.
And Sven, sorry, Miguel, from an investment point of view, how does it look from your side of the fence, if there is a fence? It's probably a bit harsh.
Yeah, it's slightly harsh. Let's call it a gulch. So I think, maybe referring, back to this question, it's, yeah, one of my bosses once said to me when we were undergoing a potential acquisition, it was control your own space. So we can only control what we can control. We cannot control the US electorate. We cannot control what's happening, much further east in Russia. We can only control what we can do. And so it's about focusing on what is the here and now. And I think, to me, there are two main areas that are affecting the way money is flowing. So one is the macroeconomic environment, which, let's be honest, has been around for longer than the current US president has. So we can't blame too much on that new government. And that's been really challenging. Now, what we've seen is that with high interest rates, that has really affected the ability for companies to go public and for VCs to be able to invest because they can't free up money. And that's been a real challenge also for them to get new funds, because LPs are looking out around and saying, well, actually, I can get 5% on my cash by just sticking it into bonds or an account. Why should I go with something that's very risky, like cell and gene therapy, for goodness sakes, and put my money at risk? So we've had this really challenging financial environment, and that's starting to improve. We're starting to see the interest rates come down. We're hopefully going to start seeing some companies IPO. We've seen some acquisitions, very, very positive, but one does not a trend make. So let's not get too excited. But things are trending in the right direction. And so I think they will continue to move. What we're doing is we're now, with the change in government, we are facing some headwinds. And so those headwinds are a lack of consistency with strategy from the US government. So we're seeing a lot of flip-flopping around, and this makes investors nervous. When investors get nervous, they go towards safe ground, putting their money into safe places, and that doesn't necessarily benefit us. So what we need is a bit of consistency to go forward. But there are other mechanisms to keep companies going. And so it's not just a one-way ticket. We've got other mechanisms that we can utilize, and we just have to think about getting through the stage. This is a normal change. It's a normal variation in the way companies work. And it's ups and downs. We're a little bit down now. It will start coming back. We just need to hang on until it improves.
If you allow me, two comments. I agree with what Sven was saying, and probably I'm less concerned about a conservative agenda than I am concerned on how it's being implemented with ups and downs and uncertainty. But I wanted to go back to what you said before about managing your team and controlling what you can control. Probably, I think the most important thing a CEO needs to do is articulate the vision and the message. Where are we going and why are we doing it so that people get excited and passionate for the project they have? That's really the vision setting. And then the implementation of good housekeeping, project management, all of those things. All of that only happen if the team is behind you and behind the project and is passionate about what's doing.
Did you have a follow-on question?
Yeah, and at the risk of kind of moving forward and backward fairly often through the conversation, I do want to focus on the kind of financial environment we were just discussing. And what we're looking at the moment and kind of investor behavior and financial activity in the space, is this something that has stayed true to any predictions that could have been made towards the end of last year? Is this uncertainty actually expected uncertainty? And what are we kind of looking at for perhaps the next quarter to, or maybe even beyond? Is there anything that we've got faith in those kind of projections and predictions?
I think the investor in how the short answer is it depends. I think
Is it true?
nobody expected the first half of this year to be a massive sea change, to change back, and everyone to be showered in money, and for pixies and unicorns to be running around the cell and gene therapy space. I don't think anyone really expected that. Recovery is slow. This this downturn has been particularly challenging and stubborn to do. So I think that's not unexpected. I think in general, we felt that the second half of this year was going to be when we start seeing some, and I hate the term green shoots of change, but we start seeing some improvements. We need to see more companies IPOing, and we need to see more private companies being taken off the private market so that money is returned to venture capitalists. They can return that to their LPs, they can replenish their funds, and they can move forward. So there are a number of things that need to happen for things to improve. No one expected it would be now. I think with the changes we've seen, there were a lot of hopes that with more deregulation in the US, with some of the initial promises made, that recovery would be faster. I think what we're seeing now with a more stubborn, higher interest rate in the US, that recovery will probably be slightly slower. Now, I think Miguel hinted at it. Does that mean that Europe might become the next fertile ground? And I think what we've seen is Europe's interest rates have been coming down, and things seem to be more friendly towards startups within Europe. The challenge that we have is there aren't any good exits within Europe. So no one is clawing to get onto the London Stock Exchange, or the German stock exchanges, or the Swedish stock exchange. Everyone still wants to move to the US. So that acts as kind of a barrier still. But I think we're going to see a lot more innovation in Europe, and we're going to see a lot more early funding coming in the meantime.
Not much more to add. I think the opportunity in Europe is to take advantage of the competition, because it will drive up the entire field, and it's Europe, US, and it's Asia. It's really getting back that confidence on the investment. Out of JP Morgan, people were kind of putting a brave face. I think that's good. We need to be optimistic. But I think it's also very important, looking at what Sven said, which I endorse, is be realistic and work hard at making it happen.
I think I completely agree with that. That I'm not expecting anything magical to happen in this year.
Unicorns.
No, I'm not expecting unicorns. I'm expecting hard work will pay off, and I'm expecting good therapies will get funded with good management teams, with with good data, and the times in 2020 when money was easy to come by, that's not coming back anytime soon. So back to my this is the new normal. Let's get on with it.
Thank you. One topic that springs to my mind, and it seems probably a little bit harsh to focus on a single company, but the recent news of Bluebird Bio, has that had its own impact on this already uncertain environment? That there we have a scientific, a clinical success, but arguably a commercial wobble. That's putting it mildly. Do you feel that influence from that single acquisition, or is that just a bump in the road?
Well, I think probably one thing about life is constantly learn, right? And I think we've learned a couple of things there. First of all, probably the first learning is it's important to launch your products always with a market in view. Fantastic science, fantastic efficacy, it's only the starting point. You get a success of a commercial product if you're able to really prepare the market and launch it. I mean, I've done that on small molecules, biologics. You really need to educate, prepare the market, and do it well to get commercial success. If not, then you will pay the price. What we also saw with the acquisition recently is because the market is tough, companies are looking for alternative investment, and we're seeing quite a lot of BD and license. In other words, other ways to keep the lights on and running the business. And consequently, it's probably a buyer's market. And consequently, the evaluations are probably a little bit on the low side. So there's a lot to learn. And it's leaders that suffer the first pain that help the followers to be successful.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think well, it is a buyer's market, and if you're desperate, you're not going to get a good deal. So if you don't have the time, then then that's what you're going to see. So yes, this is I don't see this as a major thing. It's just more confirmation of the same story.
Okay, Sven.
Sadly, I think it's one of those news items that gets circulated around LPs and institutional investors, and it's a negative indicator to the space. I think you know anyone that's been in the field for a long time, it wasn't particularly shocking what had happened. I think it's allowed us to think about what are the lessons that we've learned from Bluebird. Bluebird has gone a few years ago. They were something like 8 billion. They were one of the most valuable companies, and they were really flying high. And to me, this really shows our move and our need to become more mature in a market. And so we've moved away from that. We've got a gene therapy. So, ta-da, here you go. To we've got a gene therapy. This is another way of treating patients, but we cannot ignore the basics of educating the patients, of educating the payers, of follow up, of really understanding what those patients are and what those patients need. And so this has really been elucidated by this company, the only company that has 3 approved autologous gene therapies for ultra rare and for rare diseases on the market. We would have all thought, how on earth could they have failed or have not been able to go forward? And so I think this is really an important stage where we need to start thinking about how do we compete with other therapies. So think about the therapies that they have and these indications. There are other ways of treating these indications. And just because we have a cool cell therapy or a gene therapy, or we can do X, Y, or Z, doesn't make us better than anyone else. We have to be able to prove it. So that's the one thing. I think the other thing, which was particularly sad, is in the last couple of months, they lost over 50% of their value because they could not secure that PRV. And this was a PRV that was, I don't want to say promised to them, but there was a reasonable expectation that they would get it. And they have tried 3 times, and they appealed against it and they didn't get it. And that's really sad, because I think that's a lot of what really lost them a lot of their value. And if it wasn't for that, I think things would have looked a bit different.
Thank you very much. Shall we move? We'll move briefly on to the next topic, which is night terrors. And I appreciate we've dwelled for some time on the slightly negative side, but there is some optimism coming, I promise. May I ask each of you, what keeps you up at night, Miguel? When you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, what do you worry about? Not in your personal life. I'm talking more about the. Oh, unless you really want to share.
You know about that? Um, I think what probably worries me the most is making sure that I have an alignment between what I believe and what the others see, and on what I say and what we say. Because it goes back to what Sven said and I was saying, is we should we should not be drinking on the Kool-Aid. I mean, like saying, yeah, it's fantastic. Our technology is enormous. Our value is so incredible. This will just happen. We need to work hard. We need to develop. So I'm always concerned that I am missing the point. I'm being self-servient, looking in too much inside. So that's what worries me. Because if I'm able to do it properly, I'm able to convey to the investor, to the stakeholders, to the patients, to the physicians at all the clinical trials, and eventually afterwards. So it's making sure that I attach to reality. That's probably what keeps me more worried most of the time.
Angela.
I don't usually wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I sleep really well. However, the things that one of the things that still worries me, that I really hope we can do something about, is at the risk of bringing up the B word. We're still suffering from Brexit. So in the UK, we have a manufacturing facility. We want to manufacture for Europe as well as for the UK. At the moment, we're stuck with that bureaucracy of having a double QP release, because that's what Brexit gave to us, or it's at least what the UK government didn't negotiate well at Brexit. Um, with this kind of thawing of relationships between the UK and the EU, I really, really want to push the government to include that kind of harmonisation as part of their discussion. So it doesn't wake me up at night, but it really annoys me.
Thanks for the candid answer, Shane.
Well, as we're amongst friends, there's something I've been meaning to say. I think, what concerns me and worries me is that we are still, when I meet with a lot of companies, we're still kind of in that bubble that we do cell and gene therapy, and this is cool science that no one else can do. So, we need to be invested in. And I think what I'd really like to get over today is investors don't invest in science. Investors invest in therapeutics. So what we want to see, and what I desperately try and get from meetings, is your science is great. You've been working on it for many years. You've bled it. I get that. It's wonderful. But I want to know the so what. How are you going to use that science to become a therapy to change a patient's life? That to me is the really important thing. And I worry that we haven't quite gotten that message yet. And so that's what I wake up screaming at 3:05 every morning.
Thank you very much.
And that's a maturity of the system, right? We're still living on the inertia of the science. but we need to move to the reality of the commercial success.
Do you sense that changing though? That dynamic as we move forward, everyone's growing up a little bit.
I think it is
Yeah.
probably slower than definitely what Sven would like, and I agree. But it is changing, and I made that point earlier on. I mean, 10 years ago we were talking about science. Today we're talking about patient access and making sure that all the pieces are there so that patients get treated, and that's twofold. It's our mission of delivering therapy to patients, and it's our mission of delivering back return on investment and a commercial viable proposition. So it is changing, but it is like a tanker. It's slow to move.
Maybe to echo Miguel's point, and I don't want to be harping on just developers. It's the broader macro environment. It's not just therapeutic developers, it's regulators, it's payers. We've been working, right at the beginning, we spent an inordinate amount of time educating regulators as to what are these cell things that we're using. In those days, it was mostly MSCs or chondrocytes or whatever. And we spent a lot of time educating them about that. I think we've kind of pulled back a bit. We haven't done a great job of continuing to partner with the regulators. Now, some of that might be down to headcount, capabilities, their ability to meet with us. But we need to work very hard at that education for the regulators, for the payers, help the payers to understand these therapies, what are the strengths and the weaknesses. And then coming to things like sickle cell disease, beta thalassemia, these kind of things, it's educating the patients. We need to do a better job of educating the patients, because if they don't know about these therapies, the good and the bad, because nothing is perfect, we're not going to have a sustainable business model. So we need to do a better job of getting out there and educating. And it is going slowly, but it is moving. I agree.
Thank you. Do you want to introduce the next section?
Absolutely. So moving out of the doom and gloom, and focusing more on the success for the latter half of this session, and thinking about the success stories that we can celebrate, but also how these success stories are informing next generation's treatment. So I don't know if anybody wants to get us started with an example of any success stories from perhaps this year that we might have taken some lessons from, or even just some motivation from, that to push us forward.
I can start with a very personal one for us. So last year, 2024, was an amazing year for Exmoor. We got our manufacturing license for our manufacturing facility. That was fantastic. And it sounds, it's like a one sentence. It sounds like it's nothing, but it was so much work, and it was the culmination of so much effort. But then on top of that, we signed the multi-year, multi-contract deal with Quell, and that kind of has really set us up for the future. So it's I'm maybe not supposed to share personal stories, but that for us that was a real personal success.
So keeping in with sharing personal stories, I think so for us, we invest primarily, or we have a focus on investing in Japan and Japanese technology, but we bring Western expertise to those companies. So, as many of you may know, the science in Japan is absolutely phenomenal. Their ability to create companies, commercialize, not so much. So we bring the expertise to them, and we've been very fortunate in that we've got 4 companies that are in stealth at the moment that we've created that are moving forward. And then one of them that's just come out of stealth that's raised a nice Series A of 10 million. As any of you out fundraising know, valuations are down substantially, so 10 million is a decent Series A. So I think there are reasons for being positive. There's a lot of excitement on the horizon. There are new companies being created. There are some really interesting, innovative companies in US and in Europe that are about to read out and are going to be presenting their data very soon. That's looking very, very positive. We heard this morning, Legend is going to be presenting some really good data, probably at ASCO later this year, which should be absolutely out of this world. So we wait, and we're very excited about that. I think we're starting to see people realize that it's not, we had a few years ago, everyone was in oncology. Oncology was everything. And then we had, the Schett group from Germany showed CAR Ts worked in autoimmune, and everyone was like, "Oh, autoimmune!" And everyone raced over to autoimmune, and now everyone and their brother has an autoimmune program. I think we're now starting to realize some cells, some technologies are better for cancer, some are better for autoimmune. We're starting to make headway in solid tumors, being able to target, survive, and actually be effective in solid tumors. We're seeing some really cool new approaches to technology. So I think what's happening is the drought and the challenging time we've seen, to Angela's point early, has allowed companies just to pull back a little bit and focus on what's really important and focus on building and developing capability and technologies and move forward now. So I think we're going to see some very cool new technology come out. So yeah, I think the future is bright.
Miguel.
I'm a clinician at the beginning, and I'm always very concerned on bringing value to patients. I mean, that's um, what drives me most. But I've always made an effort to make sure that there is a commercial perspective, a business success, and probably a couple of the successes that I go back to is company I took through an IPO and a company that I managed to uh, probably not necessarily valuing the science, but respecting the need to address the stakeholders and investors' need and manage to get a deal. And I think it is important, probably for all of us, to get that balance between the excitement and our responsibility and our mission on the science and the clinical value and the business sustainability of what we do. So those examples always come back to me, and I say, okay, am I doing the best with the most possible thing for the business sustainability of the thing that I have? What is, and being creative, thinking laterally. That's why companies look for, VC money, BD, M&A, and we're seeing an important success in the field that I mentioned before, and I go back, was what happened yesterday, telling us that yes, exits happen, and they value clinical perspective, clinical early data, and opportunities of forward-looking technologies. Again, anchored on clinical value.
And a completely different topic, really, but this is a very small industry. We've all been through this hard time together. One of the things that I'm seeing everywhere is the camaraderie, the teamwork, that everybody helping each other. This isn't about competition. This is about everybody trying to help each other to survive and get through this and make this a really successful industry for the benefit of patients. And that for me is quite a success story of the last year or so.
So the coming together is the success. I think we'll move on to the final talking point, which is I'm asking you to don your rose-tinted spectacles and cast your vision, mind, whatever you want to call it, forward to, let's say, 2035. Where do you want to see this field in 10 years' time? Is the first part of the question. And I guess the second half of the question is, what milestones do we need to hit to get there? So Sven's been thrusted the microphone. Where are we going to be in 2035, Sven?
Should we ask Miguel?
I actually had a strong view about this, and I was kind of waiting for the end.
So Angela and I will give our paltry little answers, and then we'll let Miguel walk in and take all the glory. I think where I'd like to be is I'd like to be at a stage where cell and gene therapies are an accepted mainstream therapy, just alongside small molecules, large molecules, biologics, etc. I would like to see them being utilized in first stage therapy where appropriate, second, third where appropriate. I would like to see in vivo therapies being used routinely, but I also expect to see allogeneic and autologous therapies being used. I hope we're going to get past that point where, because we can do allo, auto is just, it's gross. No one wants to do auto anymore. Everything's allo or everything's in vivo. Nothing works like that. There's got to be, and there will be, a spread of everything. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I would like to see a better understanding of disease. We are now at a point where we can target not only specific cell types, but subgroups of those cells. But our disease understanding isn't always at that stage. So I would like to see that disease understanding come up to that level where we can be much more targeted and understand what's happening, and we can understand the effects of the therapies on the patients. Secondly, and then the third, you'll be happy to know there are only 3 points. Third one is that we will move away from I have a hammer, so everything's a nail. So I'll give you an example. I have a CD19 CAR T. So I'm going to use it on solid tumors and liquid tumors and this, that, and the next thing. And I'm not going to change that SCFV. I'm going to use it on everything. Nature doesn't work like that. I want to see us starting to work like nature does. We probably need an NK first and then a CAR T for long term. We need to start thinking about treating injury and treating disease the way nature does and the way our bodies are designed to do it. Until then, I think we're just playing around the edges. And so I truly hope and believe in the next 10 years, we will come to that understanding.
Thanks, Ben.
So it wasn't very long ago that cell and gene therapies were unproven. I think we've got past that, and now we know that they work, and now it's how can we get them to the masses? And the bit that so in 10 years' time, I hope we will have done that. The bit that I can help with, or the bit that I know about, is the cost of goods. So that has been one of the barriers. But in the modeling that we've done, I'm absolutely convinced that we'll get cell therapies easily for tens of thousands, not hundreds or millions, autologous therapies. So I think that will be, for me, that they'll be cost effective. So then it's about how do you actually get them, which is which is maybe something the other two could talk more about than me.
I think probably the most important thing is democratization of cell and gene therapy. What Sven said, and different technologies to different purposes. The core of cell therapy is engineering cells ex vivo, in vivo, autologous, allogeneic for a therapeutic purpose. We have enormous tools of gene editing. We have to consider what we're going to do with that in the future, and we have to have an ethical perspective, a human respect perspective about what we do. The future is so dazzling, promising that we should not lose ourselves on that fascination, but making sure that we democratize, bring value, have a business anchor. And when we will be doing gene therapy to large populations to prevent disease rather than treat, we will have a tool in our hands that we have a huge responsibility to ethically deploy it well and ethically use it well for the benefit of all of us with respect of all of us. So I feel very strongly about this. It's huge, the future. Let's make sure we do it properly.
I'm afraid that's probably all we've got time for. So I just want to thank Miguel, Angela, and Sven once more. Also, my co-host Georgie. Really appreciate you all joining to listen to the conversation. There will be a video available, I believe, of this discussion, or at least the bits we're allowed to release, in case Sven's broken any confidentiality agreements after all. But again, enjoyed the rest of Advanced Therapies in London, and I wish you all a pleasant evening. Thank you.